Sri Lankans have had enough, gathering in unprecedented numbers to protest against their government for reasons not yet agreed upon by mainstream media. Hundreds of thousands stormed the streets of Colombo, breaking into its central bank and occupying the residence of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, causing him to flee the country and later resign. His Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe announced he would resign after noticing his private residence had been burnt to the ground by protesters. But he was instead re-elected as President of Sri Lanka by a secret ballot in Parliament, using his new powers to heal the nation by cracking down on protesters he immediately described as fascists. Rupert Holsworthy was in Colombo to find out whether this response was what protesting Sri Lankans had in mind.
It was an insurrection on an epic scale. An all too familiar sight as so-called independent thinkers took umbrage at the economic policies of the Rajapaksa government, choosing to protest rather than praise its progressive legislation, which foreign leaders and investors celebrated in its prioritizing of sustainability and ESG, or environmental, social and corporate governance. The new green policies banned the use of fertilizers 95% of farmers were reliant upon, contributing to widespread food shortages during an economic crisis that has seen record-high inflation across the country, an 80% rise in the cost of gas and fuel, and a 128% rise in transportation costs, daily blackouts, and scarcity of many essential goods. But that doesn't excuse the actions of these Sri Lankan insurrectionists enjoying a day in the president's pool and occupying the rooms and offices of his palace. The parallels with January 6 are frightening, although no swimming was allowed in the White House pool and Sri Lankan police chose not to shoot anybody. There has, however, been outcry from the international community over the use of authoritarian methods employed by the Sri Lankan government in their efforts to stop the protests, such as declaring states of emergency, mass arrests of civilians, imposing curfews, firing tear gas.
Hold on, is that footage from Melbourne, Brian, in Australia?
I'm not sure, Sandy. Yes, I'm just hearing from the hand that this footage is in fact from the Victorian government's response to vaccine mandate protests. Our sincerest apologies to any Sri Lankans offended by the comparison. Let's continue.
The Lankan government was actually in breach of their own laws and constitution, as well as international human rights charters, in their attempts to suppress the protests. Luckily, new legislation was rushed into Parliament, approved by one vote via backroom deals with crossbenchers after initially failing and conducting a do-over one day before—
Wait, that's the Victorian government again! The Andrews pandemic legislation!
Oh, the Drudge must have mixed up the protest tapes again, Brian.
Obviously, we offer our most humble and sincere apologies once again on behalf of the team and the hand. And I'm sure we're working.
Bus drivers who had joined the protest months earlier caused traffic chaos.
Wait, this one's from Canada!
No, this one's from Sri Lanka. It's not that bad.
While tens of thousands gathered day after day in the largest street protest in Sri Lankan history, the police and army did their best to remove anti-government protesters. The government also blocked social media communications, although hashtags like Go Home Gota were already trending internationally, forcing a lift on the ban soon after. So where to now? At least Sri Lankans have experienced hands at the helm, with currently unelected President Wickremesinghe, who first came to power in 1993, appointing his former classmate Dinesh Gunawardena, unelected of course. What could possibly go wrong that hasn't already? Rupert Holsworthy, INN News.
Stay with us after the break as Joe Sockick and Jane Bunyan bring you all the July sport and weather news.
Plus, we investigate exactly what's going on with President Biden's strange whispering.